For the hard time in a row, the third time in a row, Republican audiences out there made news. The audiences, and not the kind you want. Here's the crowd last night reacting to a question from a gay soldier over in Iraq. This guy's on duty, on post. And watch what happens. Let's listen.
In 2010, when I was deployed to Iraq, I had to lie about who I was because I'm a gay soldier, and I didn't want to lose my job. My question is, under one of your presidencies, do you intend to circumvent the progress that's been made for gay and lesbian soldiers in the military?
Yeah, I would say any type of sexual activity has absolutely no place in the military. The military's job is to do one thing, and that is to defend our country. We need to give the military, which is all volunteer, the ability to do so in a way that is most efficient in protecting our men and women in uniform, and I believe this undermines that ability.
Well, there's the Republican Party coming out against sex in the military. Anyway, the debates last night, some of the audience cheered executions. Remember that one? The previous debates, the one out in the Reagan Library, and allowing the uninsured to die. That was in the Tea Party debate. Well, this can't help the image of a party looking to win a national election. I wouldn't think. Alex Burns is with Politico, and Chris Liz is managing editor of postpolitics.com and an MSNBC contributor. Thank you, gentlemen, both for Alex. Thanks for joining. Alex, I want to hear what you think about this. This sort of raw stuff coming out of Republican audiences, anti-gay, burn them, just right off the bat. Let's execute hundreds of people. Really anti-attitudes about people who don't have health insurance. Let them die on the gurney. And this instinctive sort of negativity and even hatred of people who are in trouble or are vulnerable doesn't strike me as a compassionate conservative commentary on the party.
Well, Chris, I think that you just sort of hit the nail right on the head with that term, compassionate conservative. There's an opening here for one of the candidates on the stage to be the guy at the debate who says, you know what, let's just take the temperature down a couple degrees. Let's enforce criminal laws. Let's not cheer for executions. Let's get tough on health insurance. Let's not cheer for people who die because they don't have it. There's that space there for someone to sound like the compassionate guy, the guy with heart. No one has sort of stepped up into that role just yet.
I would add, and Alex is right, but I would add the guy who looks presidential and sounds presidential, right? You're the president of the whole country. Yeah. I know it's a primary. In Democratic primaries, you run to the left. In Republican primaries, you run to the right. But to the extent...
Who says all gay people are Democrats? Don't they feel any love at all or affection or acceptance of the people in their own political ranks?
You know what it struck me as, Chris, honestly, when I was watching it? It is that there's no natural in this debate. There's no natural in this field. And let me explain. If that happened with Bill Clinton or Ronald Reagan, they would have said, hey, you know what? This guy is in there. He's risking his life for us. They would have paused. Now, he might have probably gotten to whatever point he wanted to get to, but he would have paused because he is naturally gifted at
you're on to something. You're on to something
that matters.
Look, I want to go back to Alex and then you on that. Yeah. Here's what you're on to. Is there any natural leader who can stand against the crowd in the Republican Party, or is it mob rule? In other words, they have these raw emotions, fine, but usually there's a leader who stands up. They don't be Edmund Burke, who stands up and said, now let's think that through again. This guy's fighting for our country. You may not approve if you have an attitude about his orientation or his political attitudes, but he's fighting for our country. Let's have a hand of applause for everybody in our military. That would be a chilling moment. Why doesn't somebody, and here's my hunch, it doesn't work. Perry came out for having a heart for the illegal immigrant's kid who was brought into this country at the age of 3 and is trying to get into college in the state he's living in. How about some heart?
Got booed,
They
Chris.
boo him.
Got booed.
So is it possible, Alex, that you can't stand against this mob rule right now on the right, the Tea Party crowd? You can't do it.
Well, I think that answer that you're mentioning from Rick Perry actually did the Texas governor an awful lot of damage, and not necessarily because he tried to be compassionate in a party that is sort of hostile to compassion, but because he sort of questioned the motives of people who disagree with him on immigration. And so I think that could have been a moment for him where he tries to take kind of the George W. Bush line on immigration that, if you're going to walk 200 miles through the desert for a job, I want you in my country. But he didn't quite pull it off. And I think that goes to the other Chris's point that there's not a natural in this election. There's not a guy who, in that
even
split
McCain,
second,
who wasn't a brilliant politician, McCain stood up against calling President Obama a Muslim when he is.
This is the back and forth. If you look at polling, Republican voters say we want someone who can win and who can lead, not just someone who agrees with us. But that's in theory. In practice, all of these guys, and I would say Romney is the least like this. Look, Romney, you heard Mitt Romney say Arnie Duncan did some good things. Praising anyone in the Obama administration is not good. So he's willing to go as close as you can go. And remember last night, provoked about did he think the Obama administration was a socialist? Yeah. He didn't answer.
So he's not willing to get in the barrel and do what they want him to. Like, for example, he will not say he's a socialist. He will not say I, Mitt Romney, am a Tea Partier either. No. He's very careful not to ruin himself for the general. Here he is. Let's listen to Rick Perry, however, give him a chance, receiving a round of boos for defending his position on educational opportunities in Texas for those children, get this, of illegal immigrants.
If you say that we should not educate children who have come into our state for no other reason than they've been brought there by no fault of their own, I don't think you have a heart. This was a state issue. Texans voted on it, and I still support it greatly.
Senator Santorum.
Now, you heard that, Alex, that it began as some whoops of success for him because there's obviously his supporters there. But then you heard that slow, delayed, mean roar of disapproval. Frank Luntz, who was doing their focus group afterwards, said that was the least popular thing said in that focus group the entire evening, talking about heart. He said the conservatives are offended when you suggest they don't have a heart.
Well, I think for the first 2/3 of that answer, Rick Perry was onto something, talking about sort of being compassionate towards the children of undocumented immigrants. John McCain's answer was sort of the textbook answer on this, that, look, we can disagree around the policy, but we all have to recognize that these people we're talking about are all God's children. But that's not where Rick Perry went. He went and said that a position that most people in the Republican Party hold is heartless.
Yeah, because, well, they did make a very good point. Now, I'll tell you, I understand completely why he's compassionate towards the children of people coming here. Look, compassionate towards anybody. Texas state in-state tuition saves you $22,000 a year, as I pointed out last night. Somebody's from Oklahoma, they don't get that, but somebody here from Mexico does get that. But yet you look at it another way. They're living in the state. They're a resident of the state, and he's looking out for them.
Here's the deal, Chris, to Alex's point. This goes to that there's no natural in this debate. What do you do in a debate where you know the people you're talking to disagree?
You mean a leader?
You start from a point.
Natural is another word for leader.
You start from a point of agreement, and then you go to where you disagree. You say, we can all agree on fill in the blank. You don't start with the, if you disagree with me, you're wrong. And that's Perry. Look, Romney's a good
sorry, that's what Clinton had in the Democratic Party.
And Mike Huckabee, look at Mike. Imagine Mike Huckabee.
You got to write a book on that. It's called Natural Authority. Nobody has a natural authority. Thank you. It's great having you on, Alex Burns. Please come back. Saliza.